People used to tell me we were the kind of couple that made others believe in love again. The type that finishes each other's sentences. Kind that laughs at nothing and everything in the middle of a grocery aisle. I believed it too. Until I didn't. My name is Alicia. 32 years old. Third grade teacher. Lover of rainy afternoons, old movies, and the sound of my husband's laugh, or at least I used to be. Ryan and I met 8 years ago at a bookstore. I had my nose in a mystery novel and he asked me, "Do you always frown when you read?" I looked up, ready to be annoyed, but he smiled like he already knew I wouldn't be. That was his magic. He made everything feel effortless. 6 years of marriage felt like a well-rehearsed symphony. Quiet dinners, Sunday laundry folding, the occasional trip to the coast. We didn't fight. We didn't shout. We just worked. Or so I thought. Things began to shift the day Jasmine came back. My sister. 4 years younger, always louder, always bolder. After her marriage fell apart, she showed up at my door with 2 suitcases, red lipstick smudged, and a laugh that barely hid her exhaustion. "Just a few weeks," she said. "I'll find my own place." Of course I let her in. She was my sister. She was hurting. I never thought to lock the doors of my life too tightly. Ryan welcomed her easily. Too easily. But I didn't notice it then. I was too busy fluffing guest pillows and hiding the fragile pieces of her old self that were threatening to shatter all over my living room. She called him Ree by the second week. He laughed when she teased him about his hairline. We all laughed. I remember one night clearly, the 3 of us on the couch watching a silly cooking show. Jasmine had tucked her feet under Ryan's throw blanket. I was curled at the other end, sipping tea. She said, "You two are disgusting. You make single people feel like expired milk." Ryan chuckled and nudged her. "You'll find someone again." She looked at me and smiled, but her eyes lingered a little too long on him. I ignored it. 'Cause that's what wives do, right? We trust. We explain things away. I wish I could tell you that moment was when I knew. But no. That came later. Much, much later. Right now? Right now, I still believed in us. I still thought I had a marriage worth defending. I still thought Jasmine was just my sister, not my shadow. But shadows stretch when you stop looking. And I had stopped. Or maybe I was just looking in the wrong direction. First, Jasmine's presence felt like a blessing. She was the distraction we needed after a difficult few months. Ryan had been overworked. I had been emotionally distant, my father had just passed, and grief has a way of dulling connection. Jasmine brought laughter back into our home, and I was grateful. Honestly, I was. She offered to cook. I let her. She offered to take my car for service. I let her. She offered to keep Ryan company when I had late nights grading papers. I let her. I thought I was being kind, generous, sisterly. But generosity without boundaries is just an invitation for trespass. One night, I came home later than usual. Parent-teacher conferences had dragged on. I expected to find leftovers in the fridge and Ryan watching a basketball game on mute like he always did. Instead, I walked into candlelight. Table was set for 3, but only 2 were there. Jasmine was wearing one of my silk blouses. The red one. The one Ryan used to call his favorite. Ryan stood up when he saw me, a little too fast. "You're home early," he said, glancing at his watch like it had betrayed him. "I said 9, I replied calmly. It was barely 8:20. Jasmine smiled, all dimples and innocence. "We were just finishing up. I made garlic lemon pasta. Ryan said it's your favorite." It was my favorite. She knew that. And yet my plate was still clean. I sat down anyway. I chewed slowly while they exchanged jokes I didn't understand. Jasmine laughed a little too loud. Ryan smiled a little too softly. I looked at my husband. He looked back. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't recognize the eyes staring at me from across the table. After dinner, I offered to do the dishes. Jasmine declined. "Let me, sis," she said, already tying her hair up like she belonged here. Ryan leaned against the counter, watching her, laughing again at something she whispered. I left the room before they saw my hands start to tremble. That night in bed, I asked Ryan, "Do you think she's settling in okay?" He shrugged. "Yeah. I mean, she's fun. It's nice having her around." Fun. He had never called me fun. He kissed my cheek before turning off the light. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the third place at our dinner table had turned into a throne. And more importantly, who exactly was sitting on it now? That question echoed louder with each passing day. Like a leaky faucet that drips just loud enough to disturb your sleep. Never quite enough to fix, but impossible to ignore. Jasmine had become permanent. Her suitcase disappeared. Her shoes lined up next to mine at the front door. She began answering the home phone like she paid the bills. She wasn't just staying anymore, she was settling. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself families share. Sisters share. But jealousy is a funny thing. It doesn't always arrive with anger. Sometimes it shows up as a quiet ache in your chest when someone else makes your husband laugh in a way you used to. Then came the night I found the envelope. It was stuffed carelessly between Ryan's folded socks, the drawer he always kept neat. I wasn't snooping. I was searching for a charger. But instead, I found something that made my breath hitch. A receipt. From a jewelry store. 2 weeks ago. A ring. Diamond. Not engraved. And I hadn't received anything. My hands went cold. I held the receipt like it might burn me. My first instinct was to believe it was for me. Maybe he was planning a surprise? An anniversary we hadn't celebrated yet? But then a darker thought crept in, the kind that doesn't speak, it sinks. What if it wasn't for me? That night I watched Ryan sleep. His face was so calm, so familiar. But all I could think was, who are you when I'm not looking? The next morning I brought it up, gently, carefully. "Hey," I said while we were getting ready. "Were you at a jewelry store recently?" He didn't even flinch. Oh yeah. I picked up something for a co-worker's engagement. I chipped in with the team. Smooth. Too smooth. But this says it was charged to your card. He paused, toothbrush halfway to his mouth. Well, yeah. I offered to cover it. They paid me back. I nodded. Smiled even. But inside something had cracked, a hairline fracture in the foundation of our marriage. That evening, I told Jasmine I might visit Mom next weekend. She looked up from the couch and asked, "Is Ryan going with you?" "No," I said, watching her reaction closely. "He said he has plans." Her smile was faint, automatic. And that's when I saw it. The smallest flicker in her eyes. Kind you only catch if you're looking for it. I was wide awake. Not just in the literal sense, I was awake in the way a storm wakes a sleeping town. Every glance, every whisper, every shared smile between them now hit me differently. I stopped brushing things off. I started watching. The shift was subtle. I no longer left my phone charging in the kitchen overnight. I kept it near me just in case. I started listening when I walked into a room, not speaking. Silence reveals more than conversation. And then it happened. First thread unraveled. Jasmine left her phone on the hallway table. She never did that. She clung to it like it was an extension of her hand. But that day she was in a hurry, headed out for groceries. Her voice too cheery, her perfume too strong. Something was off. I stared at the phone for a full minute. My conscience screamed not to touch it. But trust isn't broken in one moment. It's chipped away slowly until one day you can't even recognize the shape of it anymore. I picked it up. The screen was still unlocked. I didn't dig through messages. I didn't have to. A notification stared back at me. Can't wait to see you again tonight, Red Heart. No name. Just a number. But the timestamp said it all, 11:14 p.m., the night I was at my mother's. My heart raced. I opened the message thread. Texts weren't graphic. Nothing explicit. But they were intimate, familiar, casual in a way that made me sick. Still think about how you held me. I missed your cologne on my pillow. Next time, don't fall asleep so fast. Face blowing a kiss. It was the emojis that crushed me more than the words. Flirty. Comfortable. Shameless. I set the phone down just as I heard the front door click open. Jasmine walked in with a single bag of fruit and that same too-sweet smile. She didn't notice her phone was out of place. But I noticed everything. That night, I lay in bed beside Ryan and whispered, "Do you think Jasmine's been seeing anyone?" He blinked slowly, then turned to face me. "Why do you ask?" "She seems happy lately," I said. "Just curious." Ryan smiled softly. "If she is, she hasn't told me." "Liar." I smiled back. But something inside me turned cold. Because in that moment, I realized something even more painful than betrayal. They weren't hiding it from me out of guilt. They were hiding it from me because they didn't think I mattered anymore. That thought didn't just sting, it set something inside me ablaze. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was insulted. I had spent years building this home, tending to every corner of our marriage like it was sacred. I had sacrificed, compromised, made excuses, and now I was reduced to an afterthought in my own story? No. The next morning I woke up before Ryan. I made coffee like always. I even hummed to myself in the kitchen, pretending I didn't feel like I was standing on broken glass. But I was done pretending to be blind. That's when I saw it. The red scarf. It was draped over the edge of our laundry hamper. I hadn't seen it before. I never owned one like it, too silky, too vibrant, too unlike me. And I never wore perfume that smelled like her. I picked it up, held it close, and inhaled. My stomach turned. The scent was faint, but it was unmistakable. Jasmine's. I stood frozen, gripping the scarf like it was a lifeline pulling me toward the truth. Ryan had been working late all week. Jasmine had gym nights. Our water bill had spiked mysteriously. And now her scarf in my bedroom? My hands trembled, but I walked straight to her door. She wasn't there. I opened it anyway. Her room was too neat. Too untouched. Like a decoy. I moved to the closet. Inside her suitcase, the one she claimed to have unpacked weeks ago, was a familiar bag. My overnight bag. The one I used for quick weekend trips to visit Mom. But it wasn't empty. Inside were travel-sized toiletries, mine. Some of my shirts. Even my spare makeup pouch. It was a setup. She had been using my trips to bring him comfort. In my house. In my bed. I dropped the bag and backed away like it had bitten me. Later that night, Ryan walked in like nothing was wrong. Kissed my cheek. Said he'd be working on emails. I nodded. But my voice was flat when I said, "I think Jasmine should move out." He blinked. "What? Why?" "She's been here too long. It's time." He hesitated. "Did something happen?" I looked him in the eyes. "Not yet." That night I didn't cry. I planned. 'Cause if I was being erased from their story, I was going to rewrite the ending. But not in a blaze of screaming matches or teary confrontations. No, I was going to be quiet. Precise. Patient. Let her think I didn't know. Let them both believe I was still blind. Because when people think you're unaware, they expose themselves in the open. The next morning, I smiled as I served breakfast. "Jasmine," I said casually, I've been thinking you've been here for months. Maybe it's time to look for a new place? She blinked, almost dropping her fork. Ryan froze too, but quickly masked it behind a sip of coffee. Oh, Jasmine forced a laugh. I mean, I guess I could start looking. But it's been really nice here, you know? I'm sure it has, I replied, cool and kind. I didn't push it. I planted the seed. I wanted her uncomfortable, off balance. That day I went into work, but my focus was razor sharp, not on my projects but on my plan. I began researching private investigators, digital monitoring, backup storage for text messages. I created a secret email account somewhere neither of them would think to check. Then I set my goal. Gather undeniable proof. Document every lie. And when I was ready, leave on my terms with everything. I wasn't interested in confronting them without evidence. I wasn't going to be that wife, the one who overreacted and got gaslit into apologizing for suspecting the truth. No. I was going to collect receipts. 3 nights later, I got my first break. Ryan left his iPad charging in the kitchen. I waited until he was asleep, then tapped it open. Same password. Still predictable. I went to his browser history, expecting to find maybe an old search or two. Instead, I found a secret Dropbox account synced automatically. Inside were dozens of photos. Some blurred. Some dark. But one was crystal clear. Ryan. On the couch. Our couch. And Jasmine. Leaning against him. His hand in her hair. His mouth on her neck. My robe on the floor. My fingers gripped the counter so tightly I felt the bones stretch. But I didn't cry. I copied the photos, then deleted the sync history, just enough to stay hidden. As I stood in the dark kitchen, the moonlight catching my reflection in the glass door, I whispered to myself, "You want to erase me? Fine. But don't be surprised when the ghost starts writing back." From that night on, I became the shadow in the story they thought they were writing. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I began to haunt the quiet corners of their deception. Watching. Listening. Taking notes. Breakfast, I played the perfect wife. Kissed Ryan's cheek. I complimented Jasmine's dress. I even offered to do her laundry, again. She laughed and handed over her hamper without suspicion. Inside, a crumpled receipt from a boutique hotel 30 minutes away. Room 407. Check-in for 2 guests just 3 days ago, the same night Ryan had claimed he was working late on budget revisions. I scanned it. Saved it. Filed it into the hidden folder I now kept on a secure drive named Vacation Photos. By week's end, I had gathered more than enough evidence. Timestamps, messages, photos, subtle recordings of their whispers in the hallway when they thought I wasn't home. But this wasn't just about collecting betrayal. It was about control. So I began setting traps. I suggested to Ryan that we go away for a reconnection weekend. He hesitated. "This month's tight, babe. I've got a lot on my plate." I smiled. "Of course. Maybe next month." Later that night, I left my phone unlocked, accidentally showing hotel listings for couples retreats. The next day, Jasmine took a phone call in the backyard. She whispered, but not softly enough. "Yeah, she's starting to get clingy. No, I don't think she suspects anything, just wants more quality time or whatever. She's lonely, I guess." Lonely? I had never been more focused in my life. The next morning, I replaced her shampoo with hair dye that turned brassy orange under sunlight. I watched as she freaked out in the bathroom mirror, screeching about cheap brands. Ryan tried to comfort her, but he glanced at me once, confused. I just smiled and handed him a towel. A few days later, I erased Jasmine's favorite shows from the smart TV and replaced them with random documentaries about divorce laws, infidelity statistics, and marital assets. Passive. Precise. Traceable. And every night, I lay in bed next to Ryan with one thought circling like a prayer. They brought this into my house. They think they're winning. But ghosts don't knock when they're coming for you. That's why I didn't notice the silence. Not at first. That night, I returned home early from work, holding a small box, the engraved keychain Ryan had once given me, now wrapped for symbolic return. I was ready to end the farce. I had everything: screenshots, videos, receipts, recordings. My goodbye would be clean, cold, final. But as I stepped through the front door, something was off. No voices. No laughter. No Jasmine's perfume lingering in the air. The entire house felt hollow. I walked to the living room. The framed family photo was missing from the shelf. I opened the hall closet. Half the coats were gone. Then it hit me. I ran to the bedroom. The drawers empty. The nightstand cleared out. The safe left open. My jewelry gone. My pulse roared in my ears. I dashed to the office. Ryan's laptop. His briefcase. Both missing. On the desk was a single envelope, my name written in his familiar handwriting. I opened it, hands trembling. Alicia, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I didn't want it to be like this, but things changed. Jasmine and I are leaving. I filed for divorce. We'll figure out the details later. Please don't make this harder. Ryan. No, I loved you. No explanation. Just leaving. Taking everything. I stood in the middle of my gutted home, feeling the echo of my own heartbeat. They hadn't just left. They had escaped. Like thieves in the night, no warning, no final fight, no chance for me to say, I knew. All my careful planning. All the evidence. It meant nothing now. I was alone, betrayed, and suddenly powerless. The silence swallowed me whole. I sank to the floor, knees weak, the letter crushed in my hand. I had waited too long. I thought I was writing the ending. But they stole the pen. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting to feel something other than humiliation. But the ache wouldn't settle. It just kept growing, wild and raw, scraping at my ribs like it wanted out. I wasn't just abandoned. I was erased. Ryan and Jasmine didn't just cheat. They didn't just leave. They rewrote my life without me. I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. I emailed his office. Bounced back. Even his mother, who once called me her daughter, replied only with, "He asked us to give you space. Please respect that." Respect? I gave him 10 years of loyalty. I gave her a place in my home. And now I was supposed to sit quietly in the ruins of their cowardice? No. If they stole the pen, I would burn the page. I wiped my tears and opened my laptop. Not the shared one they took, my old college one. Still dusty. Still loyal. I pulled up the evidence folder. The one marked vacation photos. I had everything. Voice memos, location data, security cam footage from my neighbor's doorbell camera showing Jasmine slipping out of my front gate when she claimed she hadn't left her room all day. But instead of sending it to friends or family like I'd originally planned, I stared at the blinking cursor of a blank email and whispered, "No more sharing. No more crying." 'Cause now this wasn't about justice. It was about design. They left thinking I would break. They forgot who I was before I became his wife. I wasn't some tragic woman waiting for closure. I was about to become the storm. So I closed the email draft, opened a new folder and titled it Phase 2. And then I whispered to the empty room with venom sweet as honey. "You ran away because you thought I'd never fight back. But I don't need you to hear me to ruin your peace." And that's exactly what I intended to do. I began with silence. It's what they expected from me, after all. That I'd curl into a victim, whisper about heartbreak behind closed doors. But silence in my hands became strategy. Phase 2 wasn't about drama. It was about damage. Ryan had left more than just our marriage unattended. He'd left his business accounts linked to my name. He forgot I helped build the brand that paid for his affair-ridden vacations. I still had access to every client, every invoice, every pending contract. So I did what any logical woman would do. I froze everything. Credit lines, vendor agreements, scheduled auto payments. All of it paused pending review of internal fraud with documentation to back it up. And the final blow? I issued a formal inquiry to the tax board regarding financial inconsistencies I found in his last 3 quarterly reports. Not a lie. Just overdue truths. The next day, the storm hit them. I didn't need to be in the room to hear it. Jasmine posted a vague story on her social feed. Something about people being jealous of your glow up and haters gonna hate. I almost laughed. She still thought this was personal. It wasn't. It was surgical. Ryan emailed me for the first time since leaving. Just one line. "We need to talk. Please." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent him a certified letter. Contained a clean, cold list of every asset I was claiming in the divorce. Every receipt. Every photo. And one sentence typed in bold at the bottom. This is not revenge. This is accountability. He wanted a divorce? He could have it. But I wouldn't walk away bleeding while they danced through my life like it was a costume party. They started this story without me. Now I was the one writing the ending. And in this version, I wasn't the one crying in the dark. I was the one flipping the switch. And once the lights came on, there was no going back. Ryan called again. Twice. Then 4 times in a row. I didn't answer, but I did watch the voicemail transcript pop up on my screen. Alicia, please. I didn't think you'd go this far. You're ruining everything. That was the moment I realized he still didn't get it. I wasn't ruining anything. I was taking back what he tried to erase. Everything he built with my help, the brand image, the client trust, the carefully curated marriage, all of it came with my fingerprints. He thought leaving me would be like changing clothes. But I was stitched into the very fabric of his life. And now I was cutting the thread. I scheduled a private meeting with 3 of his top investors. I didn't trash him. I simply laid out the timeline, the missing funds, the redirected payments to hotels and personal expenses under Jasmine's name, the legal exposure it created. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I let the truth sit in the silence until one of them finally whispered. He never told us any of this. I know, I said. He thought I wouldn't speak. And that was when I saw it, the first crack in their loyalty. When I left the building, I didn't look back. Not because I was done, but because I didn't need to watch him crumble in real time. I already knew how this story ended. Later that evening, I received a single message from Jasmine. You think you've won, but he still loves me. I stared at the screen, smiling to myself. Because this wasn't a competition. It was a closing statement. I replied with only 3 words. You can keep him. And just like that, I blocked her number. Let them have each other. Let them try to rebuild a life on the ashes they made of mine. As for me, I was already building something new, something honest, something earned. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was release. Not the kind that comes with forgiveness, but the kind that comes with finally letting go of the weight someone else placed on your chest. For the first time in months, I woke up and didn't check my phone with dread. There were no new messages from Ryan. No veiled threats from Jasmine. Just the morning light spilling across my window, quiet, steady mine. The final divorce hearing was done. I walked out of that courthouse not as a woman scorned, but as a woman unwritten. The last page of that chapter had been signed, sealed, and filed with the court clerk. I bet he thought you'd break, my lawyer said quietly as we stepped outside. I smiled. I did break, I answered. But I rebuilt every piece without him. And that was the truth. Cracks had been real. Every sleepless night, every whispered sob in the shower, every moment I stared into the mirror and asked myself how I hadn't seen it coming. But I hadn't stayed broken. I'd gone back to school. Quietly. Just an online course or two. Then more. I applied for a grant under my maiden name. Got it. Opened a consulting firm last month. Small. Smart. Mine. The funny thing about being shattered? You get to choose how you come back together. That evening, I walked alone through the same park Ryan used to bring me when we were still pretending. But now I noticed things I hadn't before. The way the trees arched like protectors overhead, the way the bench felt warmer without someone lying beside me. A little boy ran past me chasing a kite, laughing, nearly tripping over his own feet. His mother caught up seconds later, breathless but glowing, and offered me a sheepish smile. I smiled back. In that moment, I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel bitter. I felt like someone who had returned from something dark and survived. Not just survived, transformed. I was never meant to stay broken. And deep down, I think I always knew that, even on the nights I couldn't sleep, even on the mornings I forgot how to smile. Betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. For so long, I thought I was defined by the role I played in Ryan's life. The wife. The supporter. The woman behind the curtain, clapping while he took center stage. But now I see it for what it really was, a beautifully packaged lie. The love I gave wasn't wrong. But where I gave it, that was the mistake. He didn't deserve it. And Jasmine? She only took the scraps he never offered me to begin with. But this story was never about them. Not really. It was always about me finding the courage to stop begging for a seat at a table I helped build, and start building my own. And I did. It wasn't flashy at first. I didn't post anything online. I didn't announce my wins. I simply lived them. Clients came. Referrals followed. People started asking me to speak. Not because I had a famous husband, but because I had something honest to say. And in the silence they left behind, I found the clearest voice I've ever had. Sometimes when I walk past our old favorite cafe, the one where we used to pretend to be perfect, I wonder if he ever sits there now, replaying it all. I wonder if Jasmine ever looks at the life she stole and realizes it came with cracks she didn't see. But I don't stay in that thought for long. 'Cause now, when I sit at a table, it's mine. Every choice, every word, every inch of peace mine. I used to think revenge would feel like power. But it doesn't. Peace does. And the most powerful thing I ever did was choose it. So if you're reading this, wondering if you'll ever stop hurting, let me tell you the truth. You won't forget. You'll carry the scar. But one day you'll stop seeing it as damage and start seeing it as armor. 'Cause sometimes the end of the marriage is the beginning of the woman you were always meant to become.